Hi, this is Lisha.
And this is Steph, and you're listening to
Trash Bags Podcast. Hi, Steph.
Hey, Alicia.
What's up? How's it going?
Oh, it's going alright here in Toronto. It's 11:13 in the morning. It is finally sunny out, but it's super windy. How's things in Bangalore?
It's 8:45 at night, and it rained today, so it's a little cooler. And it's all right. I mean, the world is not burning anymore. The COVID crisis is a little better, but it's still bad. I guess.
Okay. I mean, that's like a pretty good update considering in our real time, it's only been a couple days since we chatted.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
That's
know,
true.
for the listeners, maybe they waited a month between listening to episodes. I certainly do that sometimes on podcasts, and I don't hold that against you guys.
So we're talking about mental health this time, aren't we?
What a cheery topic. The moment we've all been waiting for. Why does Steph need therapy, and does Leisha need therapy? Two big questions on the agenda.
Which we're gonna get into in this episode. They will find out in the end, I guess, or probably by the end.
I mean, they probably figured it out by the first episode, let's be real.
I probably think we both need a lot of therapy.
But also, like, probably everyone needs therapy, and that would make the world a bit of a gentler place, wouldn't you say?
I agree with that. But honestly, mental health, talking about mental health issues is fairly new to me. I mean, you could say maybe I've been aware about it since the past 2 years, maybe
Oh wow.
3 years.
Yeah, I guess that is pretty new. I feel like ideas of mental health have like come up in like conversations and like with friends and stuff probably for me for like the last like 7 or 8 years.
hmm Because it's
Yeah.
not a big thing in India. Nobody talks about it. You can't just go to people and tell them you're depressed or you're anxious about something. They just ask you to get over it. That's the way it is over here. We've never been given a chance to be educated about it or even give it any importance in our lives. So when I was in Canada is when I was actually exposed to it. I guess even in pop culture and media, most celebrities were talking about it. Like Lady Gaga was more vocal about mental health issues.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, that is where it all started for me. But then it's still not very important to me since I've been back here in India. I don't think about it too much, or I don't talk about it with friends. It's
Do
not.
you acknowledge it in yourself though? If you're like, whoa, I'm feeling like anxious in this moment, or stressed, or depressed, or sad, even, like, do you notice those things in yourself more now? Or have you just like, I don't know, it's easy to just like forget things, like to check in on things?
I guess I've always been very good at self therapy. I do check in on myself. I do take a note of how I feel. Like when I get mad at somebody, I try to question myself why, what happened, what was I feeling at that moment, what triggered
Mm-hmm.
that reaction. And then I just figured it out in my head by myself before I go to bed. So I've been used to that. And my friends, if they come to me for any kind of advice, nobody uses the lingo. I guess they get
Mm-hmm.
straight into it. Like they're not feeling, they're not having a good time or, something is bothering them. That's what they would tell me. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll try and figure things out together.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like this whole like you're just like and then I just think about it and I solve the problem before I go to sleep and that's what happens. Like that is the healthiest response and like does not sound like you spiral at night before bed. Do you spiral? Because like that is like prime, like that is like it's become a meme, the amount of spiraling people do at night, you know? Like I
Oh
don't
yeah.
know.
Oh my
Or
God,
do
that
you just like legitimately like think on it and you're like, we'll find a solution tomorrow. Or like, oh, I found the solution right now.
I think I realize that something is going wrong only after spiraling. So that happens. It's not like I try and figure out my issues every night. It's only once in a while. When I realize in my head that something is wrong, maybe when I've snapped at too many people, that's when I realize that I need to think about things.
You're like, okay, we got to do some kind of a check in here.
Yeah. And but
Yeah.
it does worry me if I'm solving my own problems, I don't get an external perspective about it. That worries me. Maybe that I should open up to people. Maybe I shouldn't keep
Mm,
everything to myself.
fair. That's something that I'm just starting to learn is like, I very much, a narrative that I heard a lot growing up was, um, oh my God, what is it? It's like such a cliche statement. It's like, you can't trust anyone to do it, so you gotta do it yourself or something.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know like the general kind of cliche statement I'm thinking of?
Yeah.
Like if you want it done right, do it yourself. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what it
That
is.
sounds more
That
like it could be that.
yeah, like that. I don't know that was like such a statement that I heard a billion million times growing up, and
Oh.
so like I just embodied that as a person, which like
Mm-hmm.
if you like see me and know me, you've probably experienced it even if you didn't realize you were experiencing it is like I micromanage like crazy. I have no trust handing a project over to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So like even with my own mental health, I'm like if I'm in therapy, for example, and someone tries to help me, I'm like, I don't trust them. I'm not able to be like, yes, you know what you're doing and talking about as a trained professional who's here to help. I'm like, nah, like, I'm here to fix this myself.
Oh
Like,
my God,
I'm the only one who can
wow.
fix these things. Yeah, it's like super unhealthy, but it's how I live. I'm trying to learn to not.
I mean, you've got to trust somebody at some point of time. I know it's hard to actually practice that. It's easy for
Yeah,
me to tell you this because I'm the same way as you. I don't trust a lot of people with advices, like you said.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like so easy to not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and especially when like I don't know. I guess like in like a workplace, it's easy to just like so easily be like, well, I don't know if this person's trained on this thing, so I'll just like go ahead and do that job because I know that I'm doing it. I know I'm doing it right. But like when you're in a situation where you're like literally supposed to be vulnerable and like hand yourself over to someone else
Yeah.
and you just like freeze and are like, no, I'll fix this myself, it's just like, wow, that's counterproductive. um, yeah.
So you want to go to therapy and do the therapist's job yourself?
Well, you see, I tried that once. I think you might know where this is going.
Yes.
I went and I signed myself up for therapy and I was like, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna work through all my shit. No. First things first, I sat down at our consult meeting and I immediately started crying because I was like, wow, a safe space. That's what this feels like. And like literally this was our consult meeting. I'm not even supposed to be getting therapized yet. I'm supposed to figure out if we're a match. But I just like went into the whole thing and she was like, are you a match? And I was like, sure, I guess. And we had a couple meetings. We reached a point where I was like, I don't know if we're really making any progress. And she was like, yes, you are. You have to trust the process. And I was like, okay, lady, I'll trust you. And then I went for like maybe two more meetings. And she said something to me that I knew was supposed to be a breakthrough moment. Um, And, like I knew it because we were kind of like building up to this moment, and like, we'd been talking about sort of the same things for a little bit.
Mhm.
And I was always like very easy to cry in her space. So when we like experienced this moment where she like said these words and it was supposed to be this breakthrough,
Mhm.
I instinctively fake cried for her. And she had this moment of like, yay, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I had this moment where I was like hunched over in my chair, tissues smushed in my face, like fake heaving, like the whole fucking 9 yards. Where's my Oscar? That was an amazing performance. And like knowing the whole time that I was like, I just fake cried for my therapist. Wow, holy fuck, get me out of here. This is not okay. And then, like, not only is that bad enough, but I then, like, 2 years later, maybe, like, tried to sign up for therapy again
Mhm.
and had a consult with a new therapist, and
Mhm.
we like chatted, and this time I did not immediately have a breakdown. I was like, I'm gonna do the right thing here, I'm gonna do this process properly. And then we got to a point where she was like, so have you ever had therapy before? And I was like, I did, but it didn't work out. I fake cried for my last therapist. And literally this therapist said to me, she's like, wow, I don't know if I can trust you. I don't think I can take you on as a patient.
Oh my
Like,
god.
we're gonna have to work through and like build a lot of trust for this relationship to work. And I was like, wow, fuck. like, shit, Don't fake cry for your therapist, so fuck you up down the line.
I mean, but okay. So, number one, you paid somebody, you paid a professional so that you could con them. I mean,
Yeah, worst con of all time. I'm the one who ends up fucking losing out of it all. Oh, God.
and second, the second therapist was, I mean, I don't know how therapy works, but aren't you supposed to be open to everybody? I mean, if I mean, if you need to put in the work, she needs to guide you through it.
Yeah, see, and that's where I was coming from. I was like, see, but like, shouldn't we have a good relationship already? Now that I told you that I fake cried, like, shouldn't you just like believe me more now?
Yeah.
She was like, no.
I mean, was she
She's like,
scared
all
that you
you've
would?
done so far is like, we've had one brief conversation and you proved to me that you're willing to lie to not actually better your mental health, but just like for this experience to feel safe, like to feel, I don't know, she's like, so you don't have to like experience this experience. Like,
I
I was like,
mean, okay. So another thing that I don't understand is, won't there be a few tells when you're fake crying? I mean, there are a few tells when you lie. I mean, she's a professional psychiatrist. She needs to know when somebody's
I
not being
mean, maybe she
honest.
knew I was fake crying and she's just like, whatever will get this friggin' girl out of my
She
room,
just
like,
gave it.
whatever will help
She
her
just
in
gave
this
up on you.
moment. But I'm telling you, like, I would cry a lot in her, like, therapy room.
Hmm.
Um, because like that is therapy. So much crying for me. um so like me crying was not out of the blue, and then like I literally just like shoved more tissues in my face. Like you can't see my face. you know
Right. Okay. And did you fake cry
yeah.
every time?
No, it was just like that one time, but I remember walking out and being like, I can't do this, this is no, like, and I know that like um maybe it's not so much something you've heard, but like something I've heard quite a bit is that like you need to find a compatible therapist. Like you will have to go through the work of like finding someone who works for you and with you, and like someone you feel comfortable with, and like so that you can make that progress, because or else you're kind of just like beating a dead horse.
Hmm.
And so like that was very much a lesson that like I am not compatible with this person. Cool. Got it. But also like as someone who's like, if you want it done right, do it yourself, my answer was just like, well then clearly therapy's not I should just work on my mental health on my own. Lol, what the fuck's that gonna do for me? Clearly that hasn't been working the last 25 years. Or I guess, I don't know how old I was when I signed up for that lady.
I did Google for 5 minutes about self therapy. So that is the thing,
Okay.
you can find techniques about how to do therapy on yourself. Because who knows you better than
Interesting.
you?
I think that's where like a lot of like meditative practices come in as well. Is
Hmm.
like, at least to my understanding, is that they're supposed to be therapeutic. I
Hmm.
don't know if they are
I mean, yes,
therapy
it calms your
adjacent.
it calms your nerves, but you don't get answers to your problems.
Then why do people, if it's like, do I want to take this job or buy a boat? People are like, well, just meditate on it. So shouldn't it bring you answers? Hmm?
I
Just
mean, you
pray
have to.
about it. Shouldn't it bring you answers?
Where is the answer gonna come
Hmm?
from? From the skies? That doesn't happen. You have to put in the work
No,
to try
from
and
you
figure
like
out.
thinking about it.
You have to figure out
From
the
you like
the pros and cons,
spiraling
and
and then like, sorry?
I mean, I said you have to put in the work and try and figure out what you want, like the pros and cons and all of that. Like, how would you get that from meditation?
I don't know. I think like the idea is just that like you're spending a prolonged period of time thinking about it instead of just like ignoring it and hoping the answer will come to you.
Okay, so that's basically what I asked to do as well.
Yeah, I also don't really meditate, so maybe that would be good. Do you meditate? I know you've like guided me through meditations like 2 or 3 times,
Hmm.
but is that something you do like on your own?
Yeah, it is something that I do on my own, but
Still
not regularly,
regularly?
once in a while.
Okay.
Hmm. But that is just to calm my nerves down, to be
Mm,
relaxed.
okay.
Hmm.
That's like a really healthy way of doing that. I
Hmm.
like that. You should just get like really angry and punch a pillow. Yeah. Maybe one of the reasons I need therapy. It's fine.
Maybe the third one's the charm. You never know.
do you do you think you would ever try therapy? Do you think that's something that interests you or feels necessary?
I mean, I have thought about it, but for some reason, I've never actually pursued trying to find a therapist. I just feel
Okay.
like they're not very. I mean, I just feel like I don't need anybody. I think that's more a more need for getting one.
Fair. Therapy is also like sometimes hard to like convince yourself into because of the price.
Yeah.
Like when I was finally trying to find this second new therapist, and
Hmm.
then she was like, okay, it's just gonna be $120 per session, and we should have sessions every single week. And I was like, like actually though, that might be a reasonable price for some people, but as an unemployed person,
Hmm.
that's not a reasonable price for me currently.
Yeah, that is
So
another
that's
big reason.
also
Yeah.
always a big factor.
Hmm.
Yeah. And like, so I've learned recently
Hmm.
that I guess when you sign up for therapy, you're supposed to like sign up when you're like kind of starting to feel on the brink of like maybe something's coming.
Hmm.
Whereas instead, like every time I've tried, I am like in the middle of chaos. And I'm like, somebody help me now! And it's like, no, it's gone too late. You're supposed to help yourself so that you don't get to this point. I'm just kind of learning that, you
Okay,
know.
I didn't know about that. Yeah, that's useful news for the listeners if we have any.
Well, I'm like one of those people who's like kind of like like Hulk is like I'm always angry. I'm like a little bit that. I'm a little bit Hulk. Like either like I'm always angry, I'm always stressed, or like just like generally always on the verge of mental collapse for some reason or another.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, don't worry, I've learned to cope with it. It's not very healthy, but we're there. I don't know. I guess it just like feels like a normal state of living these like it's what I know.
What were you like as a kid? Were you very, very emotional?
I was so angry. I was the angriest child you'll ever meet. Okay, maybe not ever, because there was literally a kid who threw a math textbook at my head once. I was not as angry as him, but I was so angry. My favorite word was hate. I
Mhm,
would always say, like, I hate this, I hate that, this
mhm.
is stupid, I hate it, I hate it. And like people would always tell me, like, hate's a strong word. And I'd be like, I know it's strong. I fucking hate this thing. Except I probably didn't say fuck because I was a child and that was a bad word then.
Yeah.
Um, but I was also like very much the kid who never cried.
Mhm,
Like, unless I was injured and like pretty seriously injured, I
mhm,
would not cry. And like, it was strange for people to see me or like think of me crying.
mhm,
And like, the first time I publicly cried in front of my friends, I was in first year of college and I had just gotten the phone call that like my family was separating and like it was Boxing Day and I started crying and literally all of my friends who were there and like witnessed it, every single one of them thought someone had died
mhm,
because they're just like there's no other reason. Why would Stephanie cry? Like that's so unheard of.
mhm.
And so I was just like this like angry child slash young adult.
Wow.
I mean, I'm still pretty angry. Like,
But
I literally just described myself as the Hulk.
you've never come across as angry to me. So this is actually very new to hear
That's
about.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I guess I'm like, I'm kind of getting better with that now, but like, truly as a child, like, I wouldn't say I was like unhinged. Like, I wasn't like to like any point like that. Like, I didn't necessarily like start fights or anything, but it was just this like darkness inside of me all the time, always.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and like very, very stressed a lot of the time.
Mhm.
Um, God, like I remember like English class. Oh my God, English would always fucking set me off. Like trying to like go home and write an essay and being like, I don't know why the fuck I have to do this.
Yeah.
Like I can speak English. I don't have to write this essay. And like literally like getting like trying to write this essay, my mom being like so gentle and so loving and like trying to coach me through this and me like literally just like exploding and yelling in her face. Like I have for sure been nicknamed the volcano. Um because that's what I do. I just erupt and like it's scary for people around me. Yeah.
Has
Yeah. It's
it?
also like
Yeah.
TBH like part of the reason I close myself off from people to a degree because like I very much know you're more easily able to hurt the people around you because you have just this idea that like they'll always be around and they'll always come back and like or you could just not love anyone and then you won't hurt them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna re listen to this and be like, I'm so not healthy and I need therapy.
Yeah.
Great. I can't
And
afford it. Great. I'm glad you
yeah.
don't think I'm angry though. That's nice.
Probably because you're never angry at me, at least in my face.
Moving on.
Moving on. I want to talk about what I was like as a kid. So I have two
Yeah.
older sisters who have, had it their way all their lives. So that made me feel like I could never express my emotions. I could never show anger and piss my parents off because I've seen how they react to their um, behaviors. So I would always try to be the good kid, and I've held on to
Dude, I
my
relate to
emotions.
that so hard.
Sorry.
I said I relate to that so hard.
Oh my god, i've I've held back my emotions all my life with them, with my family, that now I'm like, I do not care. I will express myself the way I want to. If I get angry, I'm angry at them. I just don't care anymore.
Hmm.
And that's had an effect with everybody else in the world that I've come across. I've tried to please them always. I've tried to not make them think bad about me, because it's always about trying to please my parents. That is in my head, in the back of my head, with like my employers or my friends and
Mm-hmm.
everybody.
So, like, and now that you're less scared to like hold that back or whatever,
Hmm.
have your parents or your siblings like have people made comments?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're scared of me sometimes. So they before they have to tell me something or ask me something, they try to observe my mood and then
Oh my gosh,
and then
I've
they
been
talk to
told
me.
that people do that around me as well.
I guess I'm the volcano here now.
How do you feel about that?
It's annoying. I mean, in my head, I'm thinking I am very understanding of your emotions, your moods, the things you are going through. Why can't you do the same with me? Why are you so affected by me reacting, angry or upset? That means something's going wrong with me. Can you think about that? Can you come and talk to me about that? No, instead, they don't do
Mm-hmm.
that. Instead, they give me space. I mean, which I guess is good for a while, but then I feel neglected because they don't address that.
Mm,
Hmm.
yes, preach. I relate so hard to that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I also had an older sibling, and
Hmm.
so
You had?
there was a little bit of that. Or I have, I guess. I have an older sibling. She's still here. uh, yeah, there was definitely a level of people pleasing, uh, but also I exploded as a child. I still explode sometimes. I try not to.
Hmm. Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. And did you sort of start recognizing that in yourself? Did you notice that before? Because you said like 2 years ish ago is when you started to like take more notice of mental health.
Hmm.
And so that, like, that's when you came to Canada, or is that before you came to Canada?
So it's when I was in Canada.
Yeah. So did you notice that about yourself, like those people pleasing behaviors and like um, stuff like that? Did you notice that before you moved here, or was it only after you moved here that you were like, whoa, wait, what have I been doing?
I kind of realized it when I moved to
Do you notice it
London.
as you're doing it? Sorry, I interrupted.
So I kind of realized that in London, because when I moved to London, I knew I would be there for a short while because it was a short contract, and also my
Mm-hmm.
visa was expiring. So I don't know. Um, at that time, I was like, you know what? I might not even make friends for life at this point. Let me just be myself. If I'm dissatisfied with somebody, I will show it. I will let them know. Or I didn't have the intention of making friends, so I was just myself. And honestly, that led to me having friends for a long time. Ironically,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I realized that it doesn't matter about pleasing people. I guess it turns them off if I do that. So I should just be myself. Even if it pisses them off, they'll know who I am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they won't feel like they've been lied to.
Hmm.
Like, what? You weren't behaving like this earlier.
Yeah.
Wow,
I've hurt
such
a few.
wisdom.
I've hurt a few friends because I couldn't fake being nice anymore. I used to blame them, saying that they turned me into this monster. But then it was only later that I realized that it was my fault. It was my need to please everybody that I ruined those friendships.
Hmm,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Such wisdom.
TMI.
Well, I hope those friendships can be repaired. Or alternately, if they shouldn't, then that's okay too.
Okay.
Sometimes you need to lose friends along the way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to talk about mental health during the lockdown and the pandemic. Ever since the pandemic started, um,
Right, yeah. How poignant.
our lives have changed permanently. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
it's going to affect us for the rest of our lives. But it's so much to think about, so much to handle. Everything is so new that I guess I don't know, at least I've never had this conversation about how to handle our mental health during this time. Maybe, I mean, of course, a lot of people would have spoken about this, but I haven't.
Mm-hmm.
How have.
Yeah. I guess like here that has been kind of conversation topics sometimes,
Mhm,
which is funny because it very much does tie into something we were chatting about before we started recording, and like is living situations. Like
mhm,
the government has literally recommended that like if you live alone, you are allowed to associate with another house because they're like
oh,
your mental health will be fucked. Like you
wow.
can't just isolate by yourself because like to a degree, I mean like okay, it's obviously not the same thing, but like solitary confinement is that it's like forced isolation on your own. And so
Hmm.
like thankfully we do have all of the technology of today that like if you did live alone and like had to isolate for an entire year on your own, you can still connect with people virtually. It
Mhm,
still obviously sucks and is very different, but you
mhm,
do have that.
yeah.
Um, there's been like a lot of talk of like try and get outside for some exercise or for some nature. Like there's been talk of like like how exercise increases your endorphins or whatever your like happy chemicals are.
Mhm,
So like even if you can't get to the gym and run on the elliptical like you're used to, like try just like I don't know, doing some leg lifts on your couch
mhm,
because any sort of movement will help with that.
mhm,
Um, yeah, a lot of just like try and get outside that will help you and like try and stay in contact, which is hard, right? Is like when you're feeling depressed or sad or alone, instinctively, I think for a lot of us, our initial move is just to isolate ourselves, is
mhm,
to, kind of almost in a dark way, like embrace that aloneness. I
yeah.
know for myself, like I do that as well. I very much turn into myself,
Mhm,
I'm the only one who can fix this sort of mentality.
mhm,
Um, but we obviously know that that's not the actual solution. And so, if you do need help and if you are going through a tough time, like definitely reach out to someone
mhm,
or, try and find that connection. There's been a lot of like virtual connection opportunities, let's say,
mhm,
that like people are trying to promote just like, hey, let's just like have a conversation or like a potter who I found on Instagram. Like they do like a virtual craft night with some people, and it's just like a nice way to be like, hey, let's just feel connected. Let's feel like we're in a room with other people
mhm,
because we don't have that.
mhm,
So there's been definitely like conversations around that over here in my world.
mhm. It's so
Yeah.
interesting that you said the government is concerned about your mental health because that is something that is very unfamiliar to me. The government does not care about not even my mental health or even my physical health in India at least.
Yeah, I mean, like, it hasn't been like a crazy acknowledgement of our mental health by any means.
Mhm,
Like, people have definitely felt like there is like a neglect of that.
mhm,
But I do remember like hearing those things and thinking like that was so interesting because, like, there are people who lived alone pre pandemic or like I know of a couple different people who are like, oh yeah, like my roommate's just not living here because they went to live with their family during the pandemic or didn't feel safe living in whatever city they're in during the pandemic, so they went somewhere more rural.
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. So there have been a lot more people like living alone and like not used to living alone in that capacity, you know, because even if you lived alone pre-pandemic
Mm-hmm.
in, say, where I am, city of Toronto, like you can live alone and every single day still see a myriad of people and have a bunch of interactions and
Mm-hmm.
not feel any sort of loneliness there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like a new level for a lot of people. So yeah, like because the government was limiting people and interactions and make sure your personal bubble is only 10 people or 5 people or whatever it was at whatever time in the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
But something that they've said at least during 2 of the lockdowns that I can remember them
Mm-hmm.
like very much encouraging that like we want you to have the smallest bubble possible. We want you to not be seeing people, but if you are a single person household, we recommend you to connect with another single person household and like kind of have like a buddy system.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so during this time, when you speak to your
Mm-hmm.
friends or family and you ask them, "How are you?" What is the response like? Because most of the time the response is, yes, I'm fine or I'm good, but I'm very grateful that I'm safe right now, that I'm very thankful that I am in the place that I am in. Do you hear those responses, or do people actually share their feelings with you, what they're actually feeling?
I mean, no, we don't hear those responses, but like to be honest, like that sounds kind of like a lovely response to hear. The one that I hear a lot is, oh, COVID. Like people are just like honestly the response that I feel like the energy of a lot of responses is just boredom.
Mm-hmm.
People are getting bored, people are getting restless.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, oh, what have you done through your pandemic? How's
Mm-hmm.
your pandemonium treating you? Like people are just like, it's kind of like eye roll almost, like
Mm-hmm.
just like a big sigh, like, oh, this lockdown, I painted my nails and I watched another movie, and like people are just like, I get like a boredom vibe.
Mm-hmm.
People are pretty over it. Here in Toronto, at least,
Mm-hmm.
we've been in various degrees of lockdown since 3 days after I moved here
Mm-hmm.
in November.
Mm-hmm.
So we're now May 11th,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, basically since like November, like just after the 15th, we've been in lockdowns.
Mm-hmm.
So like people are pretty over it.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, maybe sometimes people are like thankful for their health, which is always nice
Mm-hmm.
because like obviously that's always and forever in life a huge thing to be thankful for, but especially now when we're realizing that like even the healthiest people seemingly can still be affected by something, like
Mm-hmm.
you're not
Yeah.
invincible.
Mm-hmm.
um but yeah, it's mostly boredom is the response.
Right. I mean, at least in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the pandemic, did you hear any of that? I mean, now I understand it's been a really long lockdown, so it is annoying.
In the beginning of the pandemic, it was mostly fear. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, people definitely thought like this is the apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
It's here. We're all gonna die. Like,
Mm-hmm.
save yourselves.
This.
That was like sort of the feel was like that, or like COVID deniers being like, no, it's just the flu, haha. Like literally, I went into a store and I had my mask around my neck because like it
Mm-hmm.
was one of those phases where like masks weren't mandatory, but like some stores thought that they were and whatever. So I had a mask around my neck because
Mm-hmm.
like I just had one. I felt comfortable with that. And I asked before going in the store, "Oh, do I need my mask on?" And the girl literally looked at me and she's like, "No, we're not those mask freaks." And I was like,
Wow.
"Oh, like that like makes me feel like like I feel like a mask freak now because like I've been putting on my mask to go to the post office, but like Also, like, fuck you, I'm keeping myself and other people safe. Like, even if it does nothing, I feel like it does something.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like, it literally is impossible that this does nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
There's something about North America and this fear that any small, like not small, any like problem or disaster is actually an apocalypse. Even in movies,
except,
I've
like, the
noticed this,
actual
but
impending
they're
apocalypses.
so fascinated by the idea of an apocalypse. Like um, it's like you're you're more comfortable with the world ending instead of actually fixing your ways. You know.
Yeah. I think it's, like, honestly, it definitely comes from, like, such a colonizer viewpoint of, like, we have these systems that we've put in place and we love them and we don't want them to get broken, because if
Yes.
they do, like, how are we going to repair these systems that we love? And it's like, fuck you, your systems suck. Like, um at least I don't know, like, that's kind of what it feels like. It's like, yeah, like, uh, unless it's actually the world ending, like, what is ending here?
Yeah.
Like, in this instance, it's human life is ending.
Yeah.
That's not the world. We're not having, like, simultaneously every single nuclear power plant has broken down and now we have, like, these crazy nuclear waste problems. Like, that's not the world ending.
Yes.
We're not in a time of ice age. We're in a time of, like, human life being taken away. And if you focus on that as the problem and not what is happening with production facilities and where is the American versus Canadian versus Indian versus uh, UK dollar, like, what is the value, like, no, stop focusing on that. Focus on the fact that, like, this is a problem of human life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a problem of world ending.
Exactly.
So fix the problem of human life, and, like, in the process, maybe some of our systems go to shit. Or
Wow.
maybe one country's dollar spikes and another country's dollar lowers. Okay, well, guess what? Now you have to experience what it's like to live in a country with a lower dollar.
Mm-hmm.
That other country had to experience that for how many years? Like, maybe listen to those people, get some tips on how to live through that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can all just become a little more compassionate.
Preach, sister. All right.
Sorry.
No,
Preach.
I mean you killed it. But yeah, because I mean
Yeah.
it's probably funny for you to hear this because the idea of an apocalypse is not a big thing here. Like, I mean, nobody ever thinks that the world is ending when something goes wrong. We're gonna be like, yes, things are shitty now. We would have to like work through it, but doesn't mean the world is gonna end. Yes, humanity is gonna end at some point of time, but we've had a lot of calamities in the past before us. We've survived those. Why is this the end of the world now?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. I guess, like, people also have a hard time, like, seeing beyond the scope of what they know.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, obviously, COVID is going to have a lasting impact on the world.
Yes.
Even if it only was the 2 week lockdown that we all thought it was going to be in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
it would still have had a lasting impact,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so now, like, this has gone beyond what anyone ever thought it would be when
Mm-hmm.
it first started.
Mm-hmm.
Or, maybe some people had anticipated it being like this, but still, like, the ways in which it affected people in the world, and, like, some of the different things that have come out of this, even me and my roommates were sitting around talking about, like, what is theater performance going to look like after this?
Yeah.
Will they now, instead of having a 2 p.m. matinee, they'll have a 2 p.m. virtual screening?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that might be something that happens in the world and wouldn't have happened, or would have taken longer to happen without this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that that's so much what the fear of is like, it's not an apocalypse that the world is ending, it's an apocalypse that your way of life is ending
Yeah.
and you don't know how to see beyond that.
I
But, like,
I agree with that. Mm-hmm.
ways of life end all the time, and you just have to, as the scouts say, improvise, adapt, overcome.
Well, that's a very good note to end the podcast on. Thank you for that.
You're
And
welcome. I stole it from my friend Becca.
And I guess thank you to the listeners for sticking around and listening to the episodes or however much you listen to.
Check in with yourself, check in with your mental health.
Mhm.
If you think you need therapy, that's might be available to you. You can possibly find ways to find that's more affordable than $120 an hour.
Mhm.
And if you do find therapy, don't fake cry. If you know that you're gonna fake cry, find a new therapist.
All right.
But also, like, reach
Yeah.
out to your friends.
And call your mom. Thank you for listening, and remember to tune in next week.
Please show us some love on Instagram at TrashBagsPod. And remember,
We might all be trash, folks, but don't be a trash bag. Be a reusable one.
also, thanks to our sound editor, Micah. This would all be so much worse without you. Bye now.
Bye.